What's good, family? Podcast. Thank y'all for tuning in. Today, we are going to talk about Black history is my history. And I have one of the most precious gifts to give y'all. Her name is Miss Ada Bassett. She is my grandmother, and she's going to talk to us a little bit about the Black experience in America and what she went through personally and experienced in being a Black person in America and a Black lady at that. Let's get this conversation started off right. I give to y'all Ada Bassett.
Hi, good evening, good afternoon.
How are you doing today?
Doing good. I'm doing
Well, Miss Ada Bassett, my pretty lady, my Mima, go on and tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
well. My name is Ada Green, maiden name Bassett. I was born in 1948 hospital, and the earliest that I remember is like being about 4 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And evidently, I wanted some ice cream, and my grandmother was telling me that no ice cream today because they had to go vote.
Mm-hmm.
And to go vote, they had to pay up a tax.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's sometimes it ranged anywhere from $1.75 to $2 or more. But back in the day, you didn't spend much money a day. And my grandmother and my mother both worked in private home as maids. So
Mm-hmm.
they had to spend the money to buy the tax in order for them to go vote. And so I thought, wow, that was really strange. And
Okay.
then my great grandmother had lupus. So we moved to projects. And that was where, well, it was a bunch of people who were low income live. And they signed up my great grandmother so she could go to the doctor, but it was hard to get her into the car, into a cab because we didn't have a car.
Mm-hmm.
So nurses were coming to the house in the project to give my great grandmother shots. And I didn't realize how different and how unique and how blessed that was until I got older and started experiencing discrimination and
Mm-hmm.
everything. I realized that was really a blessing. Growing up, we didn't have computers or anything. A huge black phone, and it sat in one area, and because you were low income, you had a T line. That
Mm-hmm.
meant four different families was on one phone
Okay.
line. And my grandmother a lot of times would try to get the doctor for help for my great grandmother, and she couldn't because people wouldn't get off the phone. Sometimes they would real nice and say, "Well, you're gonna have to wait," and sometimes they weren't. And expletives were said.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, my grandmother paid a little bit extra to get a private line, and it costs to get a private line. Um, Growing up in the projects, we skated, we played jacks, we played tag, we played dodgeball.
Okay. All right. Dodgeball. That's my game right there. I like dodgeball. That's I couldn't pick up jacks, but dodgeball, I was good with dodgeball.
Yeah, the deal with the dodgeball I found out later was if somebody didn't like you when they had the ball, you were the first one that was out.
Yes, ma'am.
But we had to be in, especially in the summertime, before the street lights came on.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you weren't in before the street lights came on, you were in trouble.
Okay.
And that was air conditioning. So when you got in, everybody knew about it.
Okay, yeah, because you had to have the door open. So let me
Well,
jump in real quick. Just off of the little bit of research that I did do. for the audience, just setting the time frame so they understand the era we're talking about. You said you were born in 1948. So
Hmm.
you were born 3 years after the end of World War II, which ended in September 2nd of 1945. You were born 16 years. Now, let me say this again, 16 years. So you went predominantly throughout your whole childhood until the Civil Rights Act was signed into law in July 2nd of 1964. So just thinking about that, a lot of us read about that in textbooks. So the things that we're reading about in the textbooks, you live through those experiences. Just putting myself in that mindset of what you just said about having to be home before the street lights come on. I can only imagine what that was like because of the time you were living in where as a black American you weren't looked at as a regular citizen. Being a young adult in this era, I don't understand the coping mechanism. Like, how did y'all cope with being looked at less than? Because in today's time, you look at me less than, I'm gonna tell you off and I'm gonna tell you how I feel and on about business like that. Was it something that y'all were taught as children? Was there what was the lessons like?
You were to respect all your elders. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. If a white person came up to you, you really didn't look them in the face. You looked down and you talked to them and everything. I remember my mother was dating someone and he went to just purchase some tires at Sears. And it was a bunch of us standing in line. And I saw this little white girl playing and I went over to play with her.
Mm-hmm.
And everything was going fine until the mother saw us playing together. And the mother jerked her away. And I was asking my mother, well, what did I do wrong? Did I do something wrong? And my mother told me she would talk to me later after we got.
Mm-hmm.
So after we got home, my mother explained to me, no, I didn't do anything wrong. It's just that the white lady didn't want me playing with her child because of my color. And here in Texas, it's really, really bad. But after we moved from the projects to a house on, we called it the New Edition, and
Mm-hmm.
my grandma purchased a TV. Then I saw the marches and Martin Luther King and the dogs and all of that. You didn't experience a whole lot. I guess I was kind of sheltered and everything. My mother
Mm-hmm.
explained to me, my grandmother explained things to me, but was kind of sheltered. Sometimes I would go to work with my mother and I would just stay there, or my mother, the lady would say, well, you can watch the baby. So I would feed her child and everything and diaper her child and everything. She'd give me a little bit of change and everything, but that was it. On the weekends, well, every day you have to do the dishes and help with the housework and everything. But on weekends, you did the laundry and you did the dishes and everything. After you finish all your chores, you could go downtown. And our parents gave us a little bit of money. Sometimes we would make money,
Mm-hmm.
and we would go to Woolworth because Woolworth had the best donuts. But the thing about Woolworth and the donuts was you can go into the store, you can buy anything in the store, but at the counter where everybody sit to eat or to get donuts, you couldn't sit there and eat.
Mm-hmm.
You had to wait till the waitress took care of everybody else, and you were the last one in line to get taken care of. And then you told them if you wanted one donut or two, they would give you the donut. You would pay them the money, and you had to go outside to eat the donut. You couldn't eat the donut on the premises and everything.
Mm-hmm.
When I became a teenager and we wanted to go to the movies, we went inside the movie theater. But then the first part of I remember having to go outside and go up through the I guess it was a fire escape or some stairs to
Okay.
go to the balcony. But they didn't realize that the show or the movie that we were watching it from the balcony wasn't better than watching it from down.
That's just crazy when you like actually hearing about it. And I say that because I've read books, I've studied up on history, on certain aspects of history, and looking at a lot of the things that we're going through today in today's time and how they're trying to rewrite history and kind of give the impression that what you're saying was not the actual experience in this country, what you experienced firsthand. And hearing it from you is like, granted, you told me as a kid, but now that I'm an adult and I have children of my own, it hits different because you're looking. Some would say history's on the verge of somewhat repeating itself because we're trying to do away with certain aspects of history that taught us not to, basically how to be, how what we shouldn't do, because we look back at the past and we realize that this was wrong. You lived through transitions in this country where at one point in time, hey, it was okay to look at this person because of the color of their skin as a less than person, to now it's wrong to look at a person because of the color of their skin as a less than person, to where now we're going back to, hey, it's okay. What was your transition like once once the Civil Rights Act was signed into law? In 1965, the Voting Rights Act was signed into law. What was your experience then? Like how was that transition for you?
Was very cautious. There are things that happened in Sinton, and especially in Sinton. We would have to go through Sinton a lot of times to go through to Bryant, where your grandfather was from,
Hmm.
and make sure that you obeyed the speed limit. Because if you didn't obey the speed limit, you could get put in jail, and your family might not see you again.
Hmm.
So there were cities around Corpus that you had to be real careful. Here in Corpus, you had to be really careful.
And for the
So,
audience, we're talking about Corpus Christi, Texas.
but like I said, it wasn't too bad in Corpus. It wasn't as bad in Corpus as it was in Georgia or Mississippi or some of the other cities. But the establishment made sure that you understood that you knew who you were.
I can understand that. I mean, and we're talking about Corpus Christi, Texas, and when they think of civil rights movement, they think of Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, North Carolina, a lot of the big name states. So we're talking about a minor city in a major state in the South. So to think that just even in the minor cities, you were still experiencing that level of segregation. Now, granted, you didn't experience it on the level of those elsewhere from your experience, but to still think that it trickled down. When you look at the rhetoric back then and the times that you were living in, it's crazy how it influenced people. But from your experience, not everybody was influenced by the rhetoric. Would that be fair to say?
Just sort of. Dr. H.J. Williams, he was over the NAACP, and he got together a group, it was mostly young people, and they did a march on Woolworths so we could sit and eat.
Hmm.
Asked my mother, could I go and be a part of the march? And she said no, I could not because she didn't want anything to happen to me.
Hmm.
Excuse me, now nothing happened, but later on, I was working for a white woman who thought it was so very funny that he would do that because she thought things were great the way they were. And this was working for her during the time that Martin Luther King was killed and
Okay.
everything. He expressed that to me. So they seemed to think that we were doing really great because we didn't have to endure a lot of things that they were having to go through in Mississippi and Georgia and other places
Hmm.
like
Okay. So some would say, and I'm just going to touch base on just some of the stuff that was said previous with, like, just the, we'll say, the Black Lives Matter movement that took place for a point in time. How people were saying they're disrupting the peace, their problems, they're the issue. So was that the same type of rhetoric that was being said about the civil rights movement? Was that they're the issue, they're the problem?
Yeah, because we didn't see any problem with what was going on. And we should be happy things are as well as they are.
Hmm.
I went to school when all the way from the first grade to the sixth grade, I went to a segregated, all black. There was a
Hmm.
few Hispanics in the class. I didn't go to school with whites and Hispanic people until I got in junior high and in high school.
What was that experience like? I mean, going from K all the way to sixth grade and then junior high school, you're basically in a non-segregated section. I mean, were kids kind of still off to their own sections, like the white kids stuck with the white kids, the Hispanic kids stuck with the Hispanic kids?
Last time we were, a few of the Hispanics taught us how to dance the way they dance and everything because
Huh?
we had a, a let's see, Valentine's Day dances and stuff like that. And we and us blacks learned how to dance the way the Hispanics dance. And of course, everybody wanted to know how to dance how we dance,
Hmm.
whites and everything. Because back then there were a lot of white artists, but the black artists and the black music and the black rhythms really attracted the white teenagers.
Okay. Let me ask you this question. Through all this, and again, I know how you had a hand in raising me. How big was religion?
This is where, Saturday you haircuts, you got went to the beauty shop, you and your mom and everybody, and you laid out your clothes. And Sunday morning you ate breakfast, you went to Sunday school, you went to church. We had 3 o'clock service. 3 o'clock service, all the churches in the cities would get together and everything. Then you would go back to your church for BTU and training union, and then night service. Our pastors encouraged us to be strong, and no matter what was going on, Monday through Friday, God cared for you, God loves you, and you are equal. You
Hmm.
know, So, and this is what we were taught. And in training union, we were taught how to conduct a meeting and how to do different things. So we were learning a lot of things, not only about our faith, but how to conduct ourselves outside of the church.
Okay. Church was a big staple point. Church was it wasn't just we're gonna learn about Jesus and God. It was, hey, we're gonna prep y'all up on how to be productive members in society.
Yes, yes, major part. And you saw very few children at home on Sunday. Everybody, even the parents that didn't go to church wanted their children in church to get a foundation,
Hmm.
to get that foundation.
So in transitioning to adult, we've established you went to K through six segregated. You went to junior high, high school
Besides,
non-segregated. So by the time you're in your adult phase, we're well off into the acts have been passed. We're integrating society. And so was there still lingerings of Jim Crow and segregation into your adulthood, like when you got into off into your 20s and 30s?
well, there was still job discrimination,
Hmm.
but you did the best of it and everything. When you did get into a position, sometimes you were looked over, but we realized that that was a part of this life that we had.
Okay.
When your grandfather and I, we were friends with the people we work with,
Hmm.
whether they were Hispanic or whatever. We got together and outside of the workplace and at the workplace. It was I remember Lawrence telling me that when he was in service, that he was talking to a person that wasn't of his race. And they were just talking about different things. And the guy said, "Oh, well, you all do the same things that we do." And
Hmm.
then I remember when I was going to nursing school, we had a little get together or something, and my director, nursing director, asked me something about my children, and I said, well, they hop up on the zinc, and I talked to them about their day, and they talked to me about their day. She said, your kids do this too? I said, yeah, your kids do. You know,
Yeah.
so you find out that even though you're a different color, that a lot of things that went on in their house went on in our household,
Mm-hmm.
together. And we had we had meals together unless Lawrence worked 311. And then he would always call in around the time we were eating. And we sit down and we talked about our day. He talked about his day. I talked about my day because I was working and he was working in the refinery. And that one,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes
So,
there was a little discrimination going on. We
mhm.
just,
It's funny you said that. You kind of went into my next question. What was the structure of the average black family or your family growing up? So, and I asked that question because we live in society today where the question of what is the role a man plays, a woman plays in the family, what is that dynamic supposed to look like? You have nowadays men wanting their woman to be an old school woman, cook, clean, do everything else, and you have women saying, "Well, I'm working just as hard as you're working, so why should I have to subject myself to that type of lifestyle?" So what? So how did you and Papa find y'all's balance in the family life?
well, Lawrence was a very smart man. He said whatever worked for those two people.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes there were men that were good, so they would do the cooking and the grocery shopping, where the wife would do other things. I know wives that they love to do yard work, so they would be out there cutting the and mowing the lawn and edging up and stuff. Lauren said whatever worked for those two people because
Mm-hmm.
we bring in different talents and bring in different, oh gosh, these situations that we have that come from where we are because you come from two different,
Mm-hmm.
and you and your husband are making a family of your own. So you have to figure out what works for your family. I did the cooking. Every once in a while he would barbecue and everything, and he would do the dishes and stuff. Sometimes I would whatever needed to be done. If the trash needed to go out, sometimes I put the trash out. He put the trash out. With discipline of the kids, it depended on what they did. If it was
Mm-hmm.
a minor thing, he was always calling home to check. I would always tell him what was going on and tell him, well, you shouldn't have did this or you shouldn't have did that. And so I didn't wait until when your daddy gets home, he's gonna take care of it. He's gonna get you. No, it's like that. I took care of it then. But then if it was something really major, then he came home and then he put his 2 cents in too and everything.
Mm-hmm.
We realized after they were almost adults, we realized that what they said on the Cosby Show, the kids want the house, the car, and everything, and they don't want no bills, and they want us gone.
That's good to know because my last guest I had on, we were talking about marriage life and things that kind of happened in his marriage. And the question I posed him was there anybody to guide you? So like for me in my marriage, my mom wasn't married long, but you and Papa were married long. So I had you and Papa, and I had my grandma, my papa on my dad's side. So y'all were the example of what a marriage should be or should we should try to strive for. So and one of the things I kind of pieced together, especially from talking to Papa, is communication. That was one of the things he stressed was that you gotta communicate.
Communication. He would say it 3 times. He said, if you don't have communication, forget it. You have to have communication. You have to have communication with you and your spouse. You need to know what's I need to know what's going on with you. You need to know what's going on with me. We need to know what's going on with the kids. We need to
Hmm.
be honest about what's going on. You know, tell me the truth. I might not like the truth, but you tell me the truth. Yes.
I'm real big on one of the things I've learned in just in therapy and is validating a person's experience, which is like what I told my last guest is you have to validate their experience that they have with you, and you have and vice versa with them. So it it sounds like ain't much changed as far as marriage goes. It's still communication and everything else that has to transpire. But ask this question as an elderly woman and an elderly black woman at that, what do you see lacking within this generation, this coming up generation, the new parents? Because the grandparents are becoming great grandparents, are passing on, the parents are becoming grandparents, the children are becoming parents, and they're raising up children. A lot of times, I've heard a couple of old folks say, you know what, you got kids raising kids and grandparents that don't want to be grandparents. So
We
what?
heard the, we heard the same thing when we were growing up. You got kids raising kids, you know. We heard the same thing, but you all have a lot to deal with. I would not want to be a parent these days and time because the kids have so much. I mean, they're bombarded with so much.
Hmm.
They told them this is the method and this is the way to do things. And they live in their house and their mom and dad, they do things their way, but this is the way we do it. But nowadays, it's so much, to me, it's so much harder and everything. A lot of people come from broken homes. And unless you got your head together on how you don't want things to go like it went at your parents' house, and how you want to be a better parent than your parent was. And then maybe your parent was doing the best she could. So you just appreciate your parents and what they did for you, realizing that what trying if you need counseling, if you need whatever, do that so your children can have a better life. And gosh, I've listened to so many people raising kids, and they said that their kids weren't allowed of these devices until they got into junior high school because it kept them from communicating with the parents and stuff and doing homework
Yeah.
and doing the things they needed to do. My kids are only allowed a couple of hours on the weekend and maybe an hour or two after they get their homework. Well, how many
Hmm.
parents do that if maybe you working two jobs? Maybe if you with grandma and grandpa, maybe grandma and grandpa feel like being supervising kids. It's a lot of stuff going on these days that my heart goes out to parents.
I understand that because I'm one of those parents. I don't really promote social media for young kids because I feel like, me personally, it's overly exposing your kid. One of my kids has a social media account to promote her for track and field that mom is supervising and over. But as far as actually like diving in and letting them be in it, I'm not really for it because I feel like you're setting their people on social media are going to present their best. You're always going to see a person at their best. You're not really going to see them at their worst. So I feel like it sets a false expectations of actual life is and the hardships that some of us go through. Some of us are not as privileged as the next person. I look at myself and I know I'm blessed. I grew up with two great grandparents. I grew up with two sets of grandparents. I had my mom, I had my dad, I had my brother and my sister. I got married, I got in laws, and then through my in laws, I inherited another grandmother and another set of parents. So I understand that my story is not everybody else's story. So I think that promoting that type of stuff, it's not really, it's, yeah, celebrate what you got, celebrate it, yeah, cool. But to get paint this picture that your life is just walking on roses 24/7, that every day you got your face fixed up, your hair done. I mean, behind the do-rag, I need a haircut. I'm not gonna lie to y'all. That's why I have the do-rag on, because I need a haircut. But I don't trust barbers everywhere. But what what I'm saying is, to give this false expectation that your life is always together.
No,
And
nobody's is.
yeah,
Nobody's is.
it's definitely not. So in closing, my last question to you, pretty lady, would be: what is the legacy you're hoping to leave behind?
That you all love one another, that you all respect one another, that each one of you all are different, but a bouquet of roses, you got all kinds of roses and everything.
Hmm.
And it's a beautiful bouquet. So just respect each other, love each other, be there for each other. We never know what's going to happen down the line. And maybe this day you're up and you're doing fine, but maybe the next day you're down. My grandmother and my great grandmother didn't say too much, but every once in a while she'd open her mouth and she'd say, never burn your bridges. Never.
Well, Papa said that too.
Whether it's a job, whether it's a relationship with a person,
Hmm.
never burn.
Never
And
burn bridges.
and the Lord wants one another. He said, gee, if you don't love the person that you see every day, how can you say that you love him whom you have never seen?
Bible does say that.
And it also says that if you don't, you're not going to get it. So all of this hate scary because if you hate a person that much, but you say that you are a Christian and that you love God, something's wrong. You need to recheck yourself.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's a legacy that can go for not just my family, but for everybody out there. I believe my grandma said it best: love one another, respect one another, and hate is not of God. So if you are of God, or if you call yourself a Christian and you got hate in your heart, you are what we call a holy roller. It's you put on the front for everybody out in the world, but behind closed doors, you harboring something that ain't of God. So I ain't gonna take too much, pretty lady. I thank you for your time. I thank you for doing this. I really do appreciate it, and I want you to know that I love you, and I thank you for everything you poured into me.
Grandpa will be real.
Thank you. Well, all right, y'all. Thank y'all for tuning in, and we will see y'all again next week.